and welcome to a brand new episode of Disclosure from the Voice of Prophecy. My name is Sean Boonstra, and I guess this would not be a brand new episode if you're listening in rerun season some point in the distant future, but as I sit here, it is the year 2020, and I'm in the year 2020 with my stunning wife, Jean, my wife of how many years now? How many years have you been toiling through this marriage with me?
27?
27
right,
years.
doesn't it?
And you look younger today than the day I met you.
Well, not accurate, but I'll take it. Thank you.
No, you do. I don't know what your secret is, but you're like eternally young.
No, come on. I'm the one with the gray hair. You're the one with no gray hair.
No, I got a little gray hair. I mean, you can't
not
see it on the
really.
radio, but look, what's this here?
A
Look,
tiny bit in your beard. You
there's a
don't
little
have
bit
any
in my
on your
beard.
head.
Yeah, I'm
It's not
graying.
fair.
I'm aiming to look wizened.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the word, wizened?
I think that's a good word. Sure.
Yeah, gray hair. I don't know. I don't have much. I guess that's it's a genetic thing because I don't think my dad got a whole lot of gray until much later.
No.
And he's still got a full head of hair at around 80
Almost
years of
80.
age. Yeah, 80 years of age. So that's good news.
Those are good
Yeah,
genetics.
I might not have much else going for me. My eyes are shot. My back is shot. I fell off the ladder this past week. I know. After being warned by my wife, what are you doing going up an icy ladder? I know what I'm doing. Just don't hassle me. But I landed on the ladder. I bent the thing. It probably saved me from breaking my back. But today I can hardly move my hand. My body's telling me that I'm not 25.
Yes. You
Right.
need to be careful
I
when
don't-
you go up that ladder.
I don't bounce back like I used to. And do you know what the worst moment is, though? Do you know what the worst moment of falling off the ladder is? It's when your wife comes around the corner and says, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay?" and tries to mother you at that moment. It's like, suddenly I'm 8 years old again. You remember when
it's
you
instinctive.
when you fall off your bicycle at age 8,
Yeah.
and it's in front of a bunch of people,
You just jump up and act like nothing
Yeah.
happened.
are you okay? Yeah, nothing's wrong.
No,
Yeah, you
I'm
might
fine.
be. I did that one time. I fell off my bike and I was bleeding profusely. There was a gash in my leg and it was in front of a car and they stopped. And yeah, my pride was wounded more than my leg was, right? Because I went off in the gravel and lost control of the bike and I had road rash on my hands. Do you remember that feeling?
Oh, I distinctly remember that. I remember wiping out on my bike
Yeah,
on a
and picking
gravel
the
road,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then you have gravel stuck in the palm of your hand
Yeah,
where you land.
That's right.
Yeah.
You pick it up. I'm okay. Everything's fine. And then you don't cry until the car drives away.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
you get home and then behind closed doors, and then,
Well,
then you can cry.
The other one, you don't want to. No, boys don't cry.
No?
No,
Yes, they
boys
do.
don't. No, boys don't cry.
Sure they do.
Do boys cry, gentlemen? I'm talking to the control booth now. No, boys don't cry. At least not in public. You know what the worst part is? When I was a kid, they still had the strap in school.
Oh, that's terrible.
You know, they would spank us
too.
in the supply room. If you got called to the supply room, it was not to help the teacher carry paper back to the class. It was because there was something bad going to go down. And I remember
It's terrible.
you'd have to finish sniffling out in the hallway because there's no way you're going to walk into the classroom and let it be obvious they got to you. See, I see Joel smiling. You ever get spanked in school, Joel? Yeah. Those were the good old days
No, they don't do that anymore, thankfully.
when they beat the living tar out of us as children.
Oh, it's awful.
I had every one of them coming because I did get spankings, in first grade in particular. I had a teacher who, I don't know why she was still teaching. It seemed to me like she was fed up with life and fed up with the teaching profession and fed up with 6-year-olds. And she would grab us by the ear and drag us around when she was mad.
Ooh, can you
Yeah.
imagine that happening today? That just doesn't happen. That's not okay.
But I probably had it coming most of the time. I know this is going to be hard for you to picture, but I was a little bit of a smart aleck in the first grade.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah, no, I was a little
At
bit.
all.
I was a little bit of a smart aleck. They called us up to the board. I remember one spanking distinctly, and it was my turn to draw a letter on the board, and it was the letter Q. And I thought the whole exercise was ridiculous. I already knew my alphabet, so I drew the Q upside down on purpose. And, got lots of laughs out of the other boys. And when the laughter started, the teacher lost it.
Of
and
course.
I got hauled off to the supply room. And
dear.
but you have to finish crying in the hall. Anyway, let's get to our topic.
How about that?
Yeah. But, hey, just before we do that, look at this. I found this on the BBC's website last night.
What'd you find?
Gladiators. Oh, it's not. This is ancient. I just found this, but it's from the 22nd of October, 2014.
Okay.
So I'm so up on it.
Natalie's birthday.
Oh,
2014.
that is our daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
No, she wasn't born in 2014.
No, but
Yeah.
that was her birthday that year.
Yeah, she's over 20 years of age now.
Yeah.
I know. That's why you have all that gray hair. You've raised children.
Exactly.
Gladiators, the BBC reported, were mostly vegetarian. Does that come as a surprise to you?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gladiators, Roman gladiators, it says, had a diet that was mostly vegetarian, according to the analysis of bones from a cemetery where the arena fighters were buried. So this is the Medical University of Vienna in Austria and the University of Bern in Switzerland, and they've discovered that the gladiators had a vegetarian diet.
Interesting.
So, yeah, which is interesting because when you go back, I mean, these were not students of the Bible, but when you go back to the book of Genesis, you do find that the original diet prescribed for the human race was a vegetarian diet. And we've seen studies that those who return to what someone might call the Eden diet, a plant-based diet, are living in North America. They're living anywhere from 7 to 10 years longer than the general population.
Right.
So it's fascinating. The Romans came to that conclusion on their own. And I guess it was a surprise to me because, I don't know, I guess I assumed that a man's man would go out into the arena having eaten some red meat and then go out and
fight.
Fight.
Well, what I also find interesting about that story is that they were able to tell that from analyzing their bones. The science behind that is very interesting.
Right. Just little sign of meat or dairy products in the diet of almost all these professional fighters, it says.
And how they were able to tell.
No dairy products. Well, this tells me something for sure. There were no Dutch gladiators. Because if they were dairy-free, I mean, what are the odds that you kidnap a bunch of barbarians from the Netherlands and they're not eating cheese?
Pretty rare.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the national diet of the Netherlands is cheese. But I found that interesting that they came to this conclusion on their own, that these guys who, I mean, they had something like a 1 in 10, 1 in 9 chance of being killed every time they went out. Right. And with those odds, they wanted to be in peak form, right? They wanted to know exactly what was going to happen out on the gladiator field, I guess, in the arena, and wanted to be in top shape. And they came to the conclusion that that meant eating what amounts to the diet of the Garden of Eden. So I find that fascinating. And I know that that a lot of people report. I did it for the longest time. I went completely vegan
for more than a decade.
Yeah, and I found that my energy level went up. My thoughts were clear. It was anyway. I just found that interesting. It's not really our topic for today. What we're going to do today is start a brand new series, and it's going to drive some people crazy because we're going to do it out of sequence. Did you hear my computer ping a minute ago?
I did.
Yeah, I left my, and they're nodding in the control booth. Sean, you moron. You left your computer on and it's pinging away. I was getting emails. Let me shut off my email.
Just turn your volume off.
I turn my volume. I don't, but then I can see the little badges telling me I had emails and we need to pay attention to the radio show.
Do.
And I've got just enough ADD in my old age that if I hear a ping, I have to look.
Just turn the screen away from you.
No, I need this because I've got a Bible in there. I'm so dependent on digital Bibles. Okay, here's the new series. We're going to call it, I think, Stories from the Beloved. And by the Beloved, I mean the disciple John. Jesus loved all of his disciples, no question about it. But out of the 12, he had a sort of an inner circle of 3. Those are the ones that were there at the Transfiguration on the Mount. And then, of course, we have John, who's labeled in the Bible as the one that Jesus really loved. This was one that sort of was closest to Jesus for a number of reasons, I guess. And here's what I find interesting is that John is incredibly modest about this. If you're reading John's gospel, whenever he's in the story, he never refers to himself. He writes about it third party and doesn't stick his name in the story, which...
Interesting, isn't it?
Well, it's against... You know, if any of us had a personal encounter with Christ, I mean, we all have personal encounters with Christ, but if we had a personal encounter with Christ, we'd write that into the story.
You would think so.
Jesus came to me, Sean. You know.
But that speaks to why he and Jesus likely had that close relationship, because John had the kind of character that was naturally humble and serving, and we do see that in the gospel.
Yeah, we do. And so I've been paying particular attention to this gospel lately. It's actually where I'm doing my own personal Bible study early every morning right now. And it's just, look, all four Gospels are wonderful, but John has become my favorite of the four because there's so much depth in these things. Mm-hmm. And so here's what I want to do. We're going to look at a particular story. If you've got your Bible handy at home, go grab it. We're going to be looking at John chapter 5 today. And if you're driving in a car, please just get the podcast later. Don't get your Bible and follow along. But we're going to look at John chapter 5. And John in particular, let me set the stage for this story. Okay. John highlights, as he opens the gospel, the fact that Jesus is God. The divinity of Christ is on full display in the opening chapter of John. And what we think historically is that John was addressing something known as the Gnostic heresy. Gnosticism, the word knowledge is in there, it was this religious trait that existed prior to Christ and into the Christian era where, they were adopting Greek dualism, Greek philosophy, and bringing it into either Jewish or Christian beliefs. And it was this idea that there's secret knowledge and the enlightened have the secret knowledge. And in some strains of that, they taught that whoever created this world obviously botched it, and that the physical world is imperfect and evil because look at what we live in. And other entities that emanate from divine sources had to come and fix things. Mm-hmm. So they divided up all of these characters in their pantheon: the Word, the Creator, monogenes, which is a Greek word, means the only begotten. You see the only begotten Son mentioned in John. Mm-hmm. And so we think that John was addressing this heresy, and particularly a version of it that was taught by a guy by the name of Cerinthus. Now, Cerinthus taught something that was known as Docetism. And Docetism taught, or Docetism, they believe Jesus is nothing but a mere human being, a special human being, of course, but Cerinthus said he does not become Messiah until the moment the Holy Spirit descends on him at his baptism, and then the Spirit leaves him when he's crucified. So he's only special between his baptism and his death. It's similar to something that was taught by a sect known as the Ebionites, or Ebionites. I know I'm giving both the Canadian, the metric, and the imperial pronunciations of things. And this perspective does rear its head in a number of ways over the centuries since John's time. Mm-hmm. And we think that this is what he's addressing. Irenaeus, the church father, said that's what John was addressing. And John opens the letter by refuting this idea soundly. He says Jesus is the Word, Jesus is the Creator, and he's the monogenes, the firstborn. All three are the same. So that's the context for this. So go get your Bible, open it to John chapter 5, and that's where we're going to study today a remarkable story that takes place at the Pool of Bethesda. It's one of my favorite stories, and we're going to unpack that right after these messages from the good people at the Voice of Prophecy.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like, Does My Life Really Matter to God? And A Second Chance at Life. You'll find answers to the things that matter most to you in each of the 26 Discover Bible Guides. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
Wake up, Gene. They're pointing at me. We're back on the air. I don't know.
I'm awake.
How did you get a nap in? There was only a couple of minutes there.
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, that's something about you. I love you with all my heart, but there's one thing that drives me nuts.
What, my ability to fall asleep
in 3
like
seconds.
That?
In 3 seconds.
You're just jealous.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen in radio world, I have watched my wife fall asleep hundreds of times hanging in the seatbelt on the drive home. And I don't understand that because it takes me 3 hours to fall asleep in a comfortable bed. Mm-hmm. And what, I don't know, I average 4 or 5 hours a night, something like that.
5 is probably a good night for you.
5's a pretty good night. And I've never, since about the age of 8, I have never slept through the whole night in my entire life. Yeah. I thought of something else, though. I might not have gray hair, but do you know what I do have?
What?
Bifocals.
That's true. Well, I have multifocal contact lenses, so yeah.
Really?
I'm where you are there, too.
My dad got new lenses a while ago, not on his glasses, but inserted into his eyes.
Cataract surgery. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he got bifocal or trifocal lenses installed in there, which, no, I will go blind before I let them cut on my eyeball with a scalpel.
Well, I figure if they have to go in to take out cataracts anyway, why not replace the lens?
But you will be...
And then you can see without any assistance.
I guess with the cataracts, you can't see the scalpel coming for your eyeball.
I don't know.
All right. Hey, but that is not our topic today, not my bifocals, not Jean's gray hair. It's not that gray. I know you think it's gray, but it's not bad.
Wow.
It was gray when I met you.
A little bit. I had a little tiny streak of gray when you met me.
That was one of my favorite things about you.
Yeah? Was it? Okay.
Yeah, that you were already wizened beyond your years. You were 80 years old in an 18-year-old body.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Gospel of John, chapter 5. And here's the setting again. John is likely addressing some of the early heresies that popped up in Christianity. And it's interesting to me that these heresies showed up almost immediately. The church is brand new, and bad ideas start working their way in. You see Paul warning everybody, after I leave, grievous wolves will enter into the flock, seducing the congregation. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the New Testament is written to address the problems in the early church. And I guess as a minister, that makes me feel better about the problems that exist in Christianity today. Mm-hmm. This problem has been here for 2,000 years.
Sure.
And so it doesn't mean that Christianity's gone completely off the rails today just because there are problems. We've always had problems. And the problem in John's day, at least the thing that, Irenaeus, the church father, says he was addressing this Gnostic heresy or Docetist heresy. Cerinthus is teaching that Jesus is just a human being, special, but just a human being. And the Gnostics were teaching this idea that there are all these emanations from God that are separate from each other. There's the Word, who's different than the firstborn, and so on. And John, in the opening of his gospel, highlights the fact that Jesus is all these things. It's all him. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's what makes the opening chapter of John's gospel so special. I mean, it's such magnificent language. I spent a week going through the first 10 verses one time because he packs it so full of who Jesus is. Mm-hmm. Jesus was there in the Old Testament. This is the one we've been waiting for. He is Messiah. He's the Creator. It's all there. Mm-hmm. And from that starting point, you start getting the stories of John's gospel. And you find these thoughts woven through every story in some fashion or other. And you also find a whole bunch of other things, foreshadowing, all kinds of things in every story. It's really a remarkable piece of work. And the more I study John's gospel, the more I realize no human being could have made this up.
Absolutely.
No, there's too much there. Mm-hmm. This is divinely inspired. So we're going to take a look at John chapter 5. And I'm debating, this is radio. Do I want it to become reading theater? Do I just read the whole chapter? Well, let's take a look at some of it.
Okay.
And if you're following along at home, John 5, verse 1. After this, it says, there was a feast of the Jews. Now, we actually don't know what feast this is. Is it Tabernacles? Is it Passover? Scholars have debated this for many centuries. Irenaeus, same church father I mentioned a moment ago, apparently believed it was the Passover, but we just don't know. Mm-hmm. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, here's one of the things I love about... I'm not even going to make it through a verse, am I? One of the things I love about John's gospel is most of Jesus' ministry takes place in Galilee. Mm-hmm. But what you find in John's gospel is Jesus continually comes back to Jerusalem all the time and interacts with the temple. Verse 2. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Now, a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, he knew that he had already been in that condition a long time. He said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me." So he can't get to the water. And he's been there
38 years.
38 years. Mm-hmm. Verse 8, Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. And that day was the Sabbath. The Jews therefore said to him who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed." He answered them, "He who made me well said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" Then they asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, a multitude being in place. Then the story goes on for a little bit longer, and Jesus disappears. He comes back, identifies himself a little more carefully to this man, has some further counsel for him, and then it gets into a discussion of 2 things, his divinity and whether or not the Creator, well, John says he's the Creator. He's already teed us up, but did he break the Sabbath?
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. Those are the 2 issues.
Yeah. So why don't we dissect this a little bit? Because there's one thing that leaps out of this story, and I know it does for you too. Mm-hmm. Here's this guy, 38 years he's been laying by the water. Why would he be laying by the water? He wants to be healed, right? And Jesus says to him, "Do you want to be healed?" I mean, isn't it obvious that he wants to be healed? He's laying there 38 years hoping for a healing, and Jesus still says, "Hey, would you like to be healed? Wilt thou be made whole?" I think that might be what the King James says or something like that. Why would Jesus ask him, "Do you want to be made well?" Why ask that question? It seems obvious that he does.
But there are many reasons, I think, that Jesus asks him this. And the first is, it outlines for us who are reading this account in John that we have a choice. We today, just like the paralytic man at the pool, we have a choice on whether we want to believe what Jesus is offering us and if we want to choose to be healed. And also, I think, Sean, of the group that's there. This man is not alone at the pool. There are many individuals there who are all looking to be healed. And Jesus selected this gentleman to talk to and ask him if he wanted to be healed.
Right.
And ultimately, he was healed. And so Jesus saw something in him. He knew that this man would accept this and he would choose to be healed. But, I think it goes a little bit deeper than just the physical healing, because what I really, really take away from this story is the fact that this man received forgiveness from Jesus. And so, throughout Scripture, when Jesus heals people, it's because they had the faith in his ability to heal them, and then they believe in Jesus. So they first have that faith that he will heal them physically, and then they believe in these other things, these intangible things like forgiveness. We can't see that. We can't see someone stand up and walk off their forgiveness, but we saw this lame man stand up and physically walk.
You said something important there. And there's a part of this story that's a little bit, you have to tread carefully. In this particular story, when Jesus comes back to him the second time, finds him at the temple, he says, "Don't sin again lest something worse happen to you." We have to be super careful that we don't say that people are suffering because of their own sins. Later on, there's another man that Jesus heals in John chapter 9, I think it is. The parallels are remarkable. Jesus hides himself in that story too. It comes back later. And in that case, the disciples are saying, "Why is this man born blind? Is it because he sinned?" No, says Jesus. It's not because of a sin. But in this story, Jesus comes back and says, "Don't sin lest something worse. So this is tied somehow.
This is because it's not saying that his being paralyzed is because of his sin. We don't know. We don't know if he was born with this condition. We don't know if he had an accident. We just know that he's been there 38 years. And so no, it's not saying that he was there because of his sin. But what Jesus does give him is that healing as well as the physical healing.
But you bring an important point up. This is not just physical healing. He's healing this man much more profoundly than that. And so when Jesus says, do you want to be healed? Well, there's a lot going on, as you say. And I love the point you brought out there, is that God doesn't force himself into your life. He's not going to act in your life unless you would like him to. It's not who he is. He doesn't force the will. But here's something that, knowing that this particular thing is tied to the man's lifestyle. I mean, Jesus said, don't sin again unless something worse happens. It's what he says toward the end of the story. I think in that question, I hear God asking me, do you want to be healed, Sean? Well, yes. And it's almost like God is saying, are you sure you want everything this entails? Because this is not just restoring your ability to walk. This means a relationship with me. Are you ready for a new life with God? Are you ready to abandon the way you were living, to stop loving sin and live differently now? Are you sure? I mean, in other places, Jesus said, you got to go count the cost, right? If you're going to pick up your cross, you're going to lose something. You will be sacrificing something. And I know that in today's day and age, we teach, Christianity is free. I mean, I hear it on TV all the time from these preachers. It's free. It's not really free. Jesus paid a huge price for our salvation, so it cost him dearly. But then he tells us to count the cost. It's, unless you're prepared to lose everything in this world for following Jesus, have you really thought about what this means? I can tell you that I've found it's worth it to follow him and lose everything else. It's completely worth it. But I hear Jesus saying, are you sure? Is this the path you want to go down? Do you understand what this means? It means it's got to be different now.
Yeah, and the man had to believe, too, that it was possible. He had to make that decision that he wanted to be healed because he needed to believe that it was possible. And that's true for us, too, today. We need to choose, and we need to believe that it's possible for our sins to be forgiven, for us to make that choice, like you said, to analyze the opportunity cost of what it means to follow Jesus, because there is that part of it.
Well, here it is. It's Matthew 16:25. Whoever desires to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Earlier he says, pick up your cross if you want to follow me. There's a cost to following Jesus. It's infinitely worth it. You aren't buying your salvation, not even close. You can't pay for what Christ did for you at the cross. However, to follow Jesus means a life change. It's not just using God like a box of Band-Aids. Ooh, I have an owie, hopefully God can fix it, and then you go on your own way. God wants more than that. I hear the music. We're going to have to take a break. We're in John chapter 5, and we'll be back right after this.
Disclosure is just one of the programs brought to you by the Voice of Prophecy, like the audio adventure program Discovery Mountain. Discovery Mountain is a weekly Bible-based program for kids of all ages and backgrounds. Your family will enjoy faith-building stories with Jake Donovan, Mr. Simon, and others in this small mountain town. Each summer, campers visit Discovery Mountain, where they sing songs, learn about God, and reenact a Bible story with the help of drama teachers Miss Wendy and Miss Tamara. With 24 full episodes every year and programming every week, your family will have something uplifting to listen to every week. Listen to episodes on demand and watch video features from Director Doug at discoverymountain.com or on your favorite podcast platform. That's discoverymountain.com.
And with a magic wave of his finger, Joel tells us we are back on air.
We're back.
Yeah, that's the magic finger of Joel. And you can address all of your Joel Baker fan mail to Joel Baker at Box 999, Loveland, Colorado, zip code 80539, I think. Yeah. And if you don't feel like writing Joel Baker a fan letter, you can always send a donation to the Voice of Prophecy. I think that would really help us. This is entirely supported by listeners and donors, and your help would be appreciated. There you go. There's a little plug to keep us on the air. You're listening to Disclosure. My name is Sean Boonstra. I am sitting in studio with the lovely and talented Miss Jean of Discovery Mountain, also my wife of 27 years. It feels like it went by in 2 years for me, but probably like 57 for you.
No, 2 years.
2
Maybe
years.
2.5.
We're looking at John chapter 5 and the story of the healing of the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda. And just before the break, we were examining this question. I mean, here's this guy who is laying by the pool hoping for healing for 38 years, and before Jesus does anything says, do you want to be healed?
To be healed.
Which is an odd question for a man who's laying at the pool of Bethesda. And we saw a lot of things. God does not violate our free will. He doesn't intervene in your life unless you want him to. But then at the same time, over and over, Jesus said, are you sure you want to follow me? Because understand that while your salvation can't be earned, there is a price to living with Jesus in a fallen world. I'm thinking of Matthew 16, verse 24. Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever who loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? I hear preachers saying all the time, follow Jesus and you'll be good looking and prosperous and wealthy and he's the path to easy street. It's a lie. That is an absolute lie. It's not biblical Christianity. To follow Jesus means following in his footsteps, and Jesus didn't have an easy life, but what he's telling you is that his eternal kingdom is at your disposal and you'll have eternity in his presence. It's well worth the cost, but he does say, count the cost. And he says to this man, do you want to be healed? I think that God says that to all of us. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to be forgiven and healed? And that's the thing that God wants. He's not holding it back.
No.
This is what he wants for you.
But he gives us the opportunity to choose that.
That's right. You do have to, and there's full disclosure from God. That's why we have 66 books bound together. God shows you everything you need to know, and then he invites you saying, and I'll handle it, but take a step of faith. Take a step of faith in my direction. Yeah. But then the man in this story says, well, you know what? I don't have anybody to heal me. I've been laying here 38 years, and I can't get to the water because by the time I get down there, it's over, and I don't have any friends. And I'm looking at that thinking, that's kind of sad. It probably reflects reality. When something goes wrong in our lives, our friends are with us for, I don't know, a couple of months to give you a quick phone call, how you feeling? But they start dropping off like flies if it's a long-term problem.
Well, you think about it, 38 years, and we don't know if he was born with this ailment. So I'm kind of picturing it, say he was born with it.
Okay.
His parents would be there with him, possibly siblings, aunts and uncles, helping him in the early stages. But eventually, at some point, by the time he's 38 years old, he's a fully grown man. Either that support system has just dwindled, or perhaps his parents have passed away. They gave up. Or they gave up. I mean, There are so many circumstances then, and I think you're right, Sean, when we suffer, we experience that often. I think it's the rare person that sticks with you all the way through an illness and stays with you there as your support system.
I want to take a risk here because I don't want to sound like I'm whining because, well, I'll whine a little. I whine when I have a cold or a flu, folks. That is a man's right to whine. And all those studies show we suffer more than women when we have the flu.
Okay.
Oh, no, the studies absolutely prove it. Our immune systems aren't as good. Anyway, I mean, I think to a tiny degree I've been through this. You've been through this. People will let you down. There comes a moment, I got terribly ill about 10, 11 years ago, mysteriously. And this is funny. I mean, people started to respond in the beginning with their miracle cures. God has told me what's going on in your life, and here's a miracle cure. And it always turned out to be some multi-level marketing scheme. If I buy this magic powder, yeah, I can become a distributor and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, people do let you down. And I think that's in this story. This man, everybody's given up on him, it seems. At least that may or may not be true, but...
There's another thing that could be happening here, too, is he may just feel like he's alone and he has no one to help him. You know, sometimes, especially I think through a chronic pain, chronic illness, we may just feel like giving up and like we don't have any hope. And this man may have had all kinds of support around him, but he felt as if he had no one in those moments to help him. I think it speaks to where he is mentally as well, not just with not having someone to physically lift him into the pool.
Right. And, you know, is when somebody's suffering like that, I guess that's a big part of it, is you come to the point, no one can help you. They may just not know what to do anymore, but you do feel isolated and alone after a while. Yeah. In here I'm looking at, you know, we all have eternity in the heart. That's what the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11. And so when suffering happens, we struggle with that. We have this inborn sense that the world's not supposed to be this way, right? We all struggle when we see suffering or pain or death. And something in our hearts tells us it's not supposed to be like this.
Right.
And then when something goes really wrong, and you put your hope, this has happened to a lot of you listening out there, you put your hope in fallible, fallen, imperfect people, you might find friendship, you might find love, you might find companionship. There are some jewels of people out there that just stay with you through thick or thin, tough times, good times. But you will find eventually that your friends and neighbors do not have the answers to your deepest questions, like, why am I suffering? Right. Is there any hope? And for that, you're going to have to go back to the source of life. And John's gospel opens by identifying Jesus as the creator, the source of life. And here's a man who's run out of every other option, and the only option left is to go back to the creator with these questions, to go back.
Only God ultimately can heal us. Ultimately, and that's not to say we shouldn't go to doctors and use medicine, etc. But ultimately, He is the Creator, and He provides that ultimate healing, which is, you know, eternal life with Him, that forgiveness of sins, and spending eternity with Him. And you're right, our human relationships, as wonderful or as flawed as they may be, they can't provide that. Only God can provide that.
That's it. And so I know some of you are suffering out there, and you've experienced what this guy's experiencing at the Pool of Bethesda. You feel isolated and alone. Maybe your friends used to care or help, and now they've kind of disappeared. I get this. I've been through it. I know that people will gossip, and they'll spread stories. I know the real reason they're sick, you know, and they just...
it's just terrible.
Yeah, real... that happened to me. You know, I found a guy online one time. Well, I know firsthand what's happening to Sean, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know this guy from Adam. And I happened to be in the forum online. It was on Reddit or somewhere, and I cornered him saying, how well do you know Sean? Oh, we're best buds. I said, really? Because this is Sean. And he was gossiping online. I called him gossiping online. He disappeared in a hurry. And then there's the people who have miracle cures. God told me what's really going on. One time when I was sick and I had this mystery illness, they called me to the phone. Can you get Sean on the phone? We want to do an exorcism because obviously it's a demon. He's demon possessed. It's like, give me a break. I'm suffering enough already. And sometimes, you know, read the book of Job. Why would you heap this on people? I had a letter the other day. I mean, I've been better for years. My son has the same thing as Sean. Really? Because, you know, the neurologist couldn't figure it out. Have him write me. I've got a cure. Don't do this to people, folks. If you're listening, don't do this to people. What you do is make them feel like they're alone on the porch of Bethesda, and you're not helping them at all.
And you make them feel like it's their fault for doing it.
Bingo.
And you know, sometimes our illnesses, our circumstances are the result of choices we've made earlier in our life.
And it was in this story, but that's God's prerogative.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right?
And it's not fair to assume that every illness is the result of someone's own decisions or faults. Sometimes illnesses just happen.
Right. Compare
They
this
just
story
happen.
to John chapter 9 and the man born blind, and it makes
Right.
that distinction.
It does.
And it's really up to God. Look, if something's going on, and if you've got a friend who's not doing well and you suspect it's because of their lifestyle choices, the Holy Spirit is very good at speaking to them about that. Why don't you just love them? And I just want to put that out there, because so many times we kill people with our kindness. Don't do this.
Amen.
So, yeah. Well, anyway, here's how Jesus responds, and it's kind of blunt. It's just this really short statement: get up, take your bed, and walk. He does that in other places. If you look at Mark chapter 2 and verse 11, it's just a really terse command. And I don't know. I find that the answer is simple, it's short, and it feels blunt. I could be reading something wrong into that, but it feels blunt. And I'm sitting here thinking, has God ever had to be really blunt with me? And has God ever had to be really blunt with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I it's interesting. You say that you read this statement, get up, take your bed and walk, as being terse or blunt, but I don't read it that way.
Okay.
When I read
Maybe
that
I'm
passage,
hypersensitive because
No, I mean it's succinct, but the way I read it is it's very specific, because personally, I know oftentimes when I'm praying about things or I feel unsettled about something in my life, it's because it feels unresolved. Something feels random. And very often I pray a very specific prayer to God, and I ask him for a very specific answer, because for me, that just shows me he is answering me. I'm not reading into something vague or something nuanced. It just shows me, okay, God, this is my answer, and this is what you want me to do. And it gives me peace. It gives me assurance. It helps me to know, okay, Jean, this is the next step you have to take to follow God. And so I kind of see it as the paralytic. He's been there for 38 years. He's not in a good place mentally. He feels alone or is alone, one of the two, maybe both. And so Jesus is saying, do this and you will have the results that you want. And it gives him that impetus to believe and to take those steps and do what will give him the healing.
Okay, but let me ask you this, because I know God has had to be blunt with me, and we're probably going to run out of time before you can answer this, but have you ever asked God for something, but you know what he's going to say, and you're a little afraid that he's just going to tell you something you knew already, like, okay, if you want your life to go better in this area, you need to change the following, but you don't really want that to happen?
Oh, absolutely.
You'd like a roundabout, a workaround from God?
Yeah. You want to kind of hear what he wants you to do, and then put your own spin on it so you can still do it your own way. Yeah, very much. That's very much a human reaction. But I think that's why those specific prayers and those specific answers are really helpful to me, because they take away my desire to do that a little bit more, because it just shows me, God knows what's best. And this is the way to go. And if you follow it, that you'll have the ultimate healing and result, peace, all of those things as a result.
Time to take a break, and we are in John chapter 5. We'll be right back after this.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions? Like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Does my life really matter to God? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers that you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like A Second Chance at Life. You'll find answers to the things that matter the most to you. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
here we are in the last segment of today's show. I can't believe we've run out of time that quickly.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
There's so much here to study.
Well, yeah.
In the book of John, and this story particularly.
All of John's stories are multi-layered, and we won't even have time to get to some of the foreshadowing he does for last day events or the crucifixion or some of those things. But at the very surface, this story has a lot to teach me personally because I can count a number of times I've been the paralytic on the porch asking God for something, but almost a little bit afraid of the answer. And in this case, we got to be clear again. Sometimes we do bring our own suffering on us, and that's clear in this story because Jesus later, when he finds this man in the temple again, says, hey, don't sin again because worse will happen. But we need to leave that with God. That is his decision to make. The Spirit brings conviction. Going after people and pointing out their sins doesn't create conviction. It's the province of the Holy Spirit alone. Yes. You cannot create conviction in other people.
Right.
And unless, you happen to actually have the prophetic gift, but then you need to prove to me because I get mail all the time. Hey, Sean, God has told me, and then they tell me something so out of harmony with Scripture. It's crazy. But here, I'm looking at this thing. Jesus gives him this terse command, and I may be doing a little eisegesis here. That means reading into the story something that may or may not be there. Get up, take your bed and walk. It seems so. It's such a short transaction. Maybe I wanted more discussion between the two. I don't know. But, I think that in this story, when Jesus says that, the next move, in all of these stories in this book, like Nicodemus, and Jesus gives them one step at a time. Do you want to be healed?
Right.
The woman at the well is another one of my favorite stories. And Jesus keeps moving them one step closer to him and then tells them what he's expecting. And now he's inviting this guy, do you want to be healed? I don't have anybody to heal me. I'm desperate. He says, okay, well then get up and walk away. And that's an invitation to exercise some faith. We talk about faith as Christians, and it's the easiest thing in the world to talk about, but it's the hardest thing in the world to exercise.
That's true.
I've been in positions where God just has to tell me, would you take a leap by faith? How much more do you want to contemplate this? Do you believe my promises or not? Are you going to exercise some faith? And this has been true in ministry. You and I have been in public ministry for not you. I've been in public ministry for a long time. You're too young to have been in it for a long time. But every time God has asked us to do something, it has seemed utterly impossible. We don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have the staff. We have to pull 20-hour days. It's like it's always impossible. And still God says that's the point of the exercise. Do you have faith in me? Do you believe my promises? I guess God does not need us to take the gospel to the whole world. He could find another way to do it.
Right.
But he invites us as fallible, broken people to be involved because he's trying to teach us faith. We're going to need faith when we get into the kingdom of God. You're not going to be omniscient when you get to heaven.
Right.
You won't be. Lucifer was kicked out of heaven for not being, he wanted to be on the throne of God and involved in the Godhead. He wasn't invited to those meetings. We won't be either in all eternity. We're going to have to trust God. In the Garden of Eden, we stopped trusting God, and so God has given us, take the gospel to the world, and this will build our faith. I'm convinced that's one of the things that's going on. And as I read my Bible, not once in all of these stories has what God asked people to do been possible.
Right.
So you've been crippled for 38 years. Get up and walk. That's impossible.
But that's why he asked him first, do you want this? Because he had to choose to make that leap of faith, as you just described. He had to choose to believe that it was even possible. And so as soon as Jesus gives him that, what you call terse and what I call specific command, then immediately and the way the scriptures record it, it says he's made well first, and then he takes up his bed and he walks. And so it happens because he chooses to believe it happens.
Yeah, that's true. And it highlights something for me that I've often said when I'm, teaching a Bible class, or Christianity is something that you only ever really learn by doing. And there are a lot of religions that all they require is some mental assent from you. Yes, I believe the following. Christianity goes one step further. A relationship with Jesus goes one step further. It's one thing to read the Bible and think these stories must be true. But God calls you to do more than just say, yes, I believe those stories are factual. Mm-hmm. What he's saying at the end of it is, if you believe this, then do it. Mm-hmm. It's like bungee jumping, right? Mm-hmm. Scientifically, using the laws of physics, I can figure out, I'll check the elasticity of the bungee cord. I'll check my weight and the wind and everything, and I can scientifically come to the conclusion that if I jump off the bridge, the elastic band is going to stop me from cracking my head open on the bottom of the river, right?
Right.
Do I really believe it yet? Factually, I have given assent to the fact that the math adds up, but how do I demonstrate that I really believe my conclusions?
By jumping.
Yeah, you put it on there.
Yeah.
You put the bands on, and that is where Jesus brings everybody. In these stories, you see him asking these questions. Would you like to be healed? There are some analytical questions that help you consider what you're about to do, but then it always comes down to, if you believe me, get up and walk.
Right. And each of the miracles, this is one of the miracles we find in the Gospel of John, but as we continue to study throughout the book of John, there are all kinds of miracles. And there's a verse towards the end of the book that I just love because it sort of beautifully summarizes for us why all these miracles occurred. And it's John 20, verse 31. Mm-hmm. And it says, "These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." And so that's the whole purpose of these healings, of these miracles, that these people may believe. Think of all those other sick people gathered around the pool that day. They witnessed that miracle. They were able to believe, many of them. We today were able to believe because of these miracles.
Well, that's true. And that's beautiful that John ends that way. I hadn't given that any thought. But basically, okay, I've told you all these stories. He is the creator. Mm-hmm. Jesus is the one who made this world. He's the one who can offer you life. And so at the end of telling all these stories, he says, now it's your turn.
Exactly, right.
Are you going to believe? And believe doesn't mean give mental assent. These are historically factual. No, it means put on the bungee cord and jump, would you?
Right.
Believe it.
Give your whole life to this. Make your life about this.
Right. And you notice Jesus doesn't demonstrate it before he gets up and walks that it's possible. The guy has to get up and walk. Mm-hmm. And that's really where God, so many times, the children of Israel, how are we going to cross the water? Not till they put their feet in the water does the water part, right? Mm-hmm. The priests step into the river.
That's true.
And God says, I've given you the promise. The next thing I need from you is to believe me and get up and walk and follow the Son of God. And here's what I find amazing. In the Gospel of John, it talks about eternal life more than in any of the other Gospels. And it's always in the present tense. This is something you can have now. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to reap the consequences of living in a fallen world, that you're not going to age. We talked about that today. We're going to age and die. But it's the qualities of eternal life, that vibrant relationship with the one who brings life. That's what John's premise is in the opening of the gospel. He's the one who is the source of all life. You can be connected to that now and enjoy the qualities of living in his presence beginning now, but you're going to have to take his promise and get up and walk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's been there 38 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think John highlights how long it was?
I think there are a few reasons. First of all, perhaps some individuals who were firsthand readers of this account may have known who this man was, and that would have then made it very verifiable and very real to them. They may have known, oh, that's so-and-so. I know who was there for 38 years. But I think more than that, it just affirms the miracle of the situation of what happened. He wasn't there with a broken leg that, he'd been sitting there, so it healed. He'd been there for 38 years. This was such a miracle that he was able to then, just with the words of Jesus, to get up and walk. I also think, too, like we talked about earlier, it shows the process of where he was. He mentally was there for 38 years, so I do feel like there must have been some desperateness, some despondency, him talking about not having anyone to help him. And so Jesus healed him in so many ways. He healed him from that physical. He healed him from whatever despondency and despair he was in, and he healed him from the weight of his sins. He gave him the ultimate healing, which is forgiveness.
Yeah. One of the key points that John makes as he opens the gospel is that, the Word came into this world, the source of life, the Creator, and we missed him. We were in the darkness. The light came and the darkness missed it. We refused to recognize him. And so that's one of the premises that opens the book, is that we are so blinded by our selfishness or our own routines that we can miss God in our lives. Blindness is a theme here in this book. And so it's telling us, man, you can spend your whole lifetime looking in the wrong place for answers. Yes. And so often the suffering we have in our hearts and our minds particularly goes on for many long years unnecessarily because we've gone to the wrong places. This guy's trying to depend on his friends and they have failed him. It's been 38 years. And you got to wonder, he could have come to Christ earlier than that, maybe not by name or in person, but was he looking in the right place for healing? Mm-hmm. Maybe he was, but I know in my story, I was stubborn. It went a long time before I came to the real answer. I tried every substitute first. Maybe there's a workaround. I don't have to count the cost and follow Jesus. That's our stubborn pride that does that. The other thing here that I think is going on is there's a story here about patience. God will heal you if you ask him, but he's going to do it on his schedule.
Yes.
All right. I've seen a lot of healings in my day, miraculous things, but not everybody every time. Mm-hmm. The first anointing service, that's something you find in James. Gather the elders, have special prayer. First time I ever did that as a minister, that person was my first funeral.
Yeah.
And that was a sobering day for me. Mm-hmm. Paul asked for healing 3 times. He didn't get it. That's in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And so there's a lesson here that sometimes you're going to be waiting for God's answer. Why? Well, he's dealing with the whole world and all of the suffering and all of the pain, and he doesn't violate anybody's free will. He wants to make eternity and healing happen for everybody. And so maybe in the great scheme of things, even though I don't understand it now, maybe being patient means that more people come along for the ride. I don't know. But I have this. I will be healed. You read Revelation 21, no more pain, no more suffering, no more death, no more tears. There will be healing. Right. Will I trust God to do that on his schedule?
And that's difficult. That's often difficult.
Yeah, it really is.
But there is a lesson in patience there, because he was there for 38 years, and God answered, God provided, God healed him, and trusting in God's timing is something that we need to be reminded of too.
Let me speak to everybody for just a moment. I'd encourage you, take a little prayerful time, read through this story slowly. We barely scraped the surface here, but maybe you're out there and you have been begging God for something, for healing, for completeness, maybe a cure for loneliness, and it's been a whole lifetime, and your friends have let you down. You feel utterly alone in this universe. Jesus is still there. He is. And the question is, will you trust him? The other question is, do you want to be healed? Do you want more than God to just solve your immediate need? Would you like a relationship with the eternal Creator? And I'd invite you, you know what? That cost is worth it to get rid of the mental anguish. There are parts of me that have never been physically healed, but I know they will be in time. The thing I cherish most is that the Creator of the universe knows my name, and he knows your name too. And he wants a relationship with you, and he can give you a peace of mind, the Bible says, that passes all understanding. And the invitation is open to you. Will you get up and walk? Will you grab his hand and trust that living with him is just better? You've been listening to Disclosure from the Voice of Prophecy. Until next time, this is Sean and Jean.